Start saving time and money today with the digital mortgage only from Guaranteed Rate. Call 1-888-449-2121 or visit grloans.com.
We Will Rise, Wednesday at 9 on CNN.
I am Brianna Keeler, and we will get right back to Victor Blackwell in Jacksonville and our breaking news coverage of Hurricane Matthew in just a moment. But first, let's talk politics. Just 2 days before Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton face off in their second debate. And for her part, Clinton is holed up in a hotel in Rye Brook, New York, prepping for Sunday's rematch. Trump just held a town hall in New Hampshire, and he insists it was not debate prep. We asked a few in the mostly friendly crowd how he did.
He likes to joke, and I think people get him a little bit better. He's more down to earth, and I think he comes across a little bit better in situations like this.
They got to stop all of the deviating and all this going off track on things we don't care about. I don't care about his 1995 taxes, to be totally honest. I don't care. Right now, we're in 2016. I care about what's going on in our nation now.
I've been following Trump even before he announced his presidency. I've been following him on Facebook, and everything he says, I just totally agree with. Everything he's been saying, my father and I have been saying for like 10 years.
Let's discuss all of this with CNN chief political correspondent Dana Bash and CNN national political reporter Maeve Reston. We'll talk about the town hall and these expectations over the weekend in just a moment. But first, I want to ask you about something we just learned. Hurricane Matthew, you had the Clinton team asking to extend the voter registration deadline, which is Tuesday in Florida. Governor Rick Scott, who is a Republican and Trump supporter, he said, no, we're not going to do that. Maeve, give us if politics may be at play and if there's any precedent for this.
Well, politics certainly may be at play here because obviously he's supporting Donald Trump. But this is kind of a gray area just in terms of voter registration. All of the different states handle this differently, but we do know that in 2011, for example, the governor of Connecticut there delayed voter registration after a storm to give people more time to register. And of course, there's also other examples, you know, where that aren't so much voter registration, but just making sure people could vote, like after Hurricane Katrina and Rita, and of course Superstorm Sandy, where you had New York providing voter shuttles to new polling places. So there's certainly a precedent for making accommodations for people who are affected by the storm. Right now, Governor Scott doesn't seem inclined to change his mind, so we'll see how that goes.
I know, Dana, you might not be surprised by this decision.
No, look, Governor Scott is a supporter of Donald Trump, was even during the primaries, and I just was sort of communicating with some Republicans in Florida asking, frankly, almost rhetorically, if Rick Scott were a Democrat, would he have said no? And the answer was, I mean, what do you think? So, of course, there's politics at play here. There's no question about it. Just historically, Democrats tend to be more aggressive in registering voters and doing it closer to the deadline, which is why Robbie Mook, the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton, made this special plea to extend the deadline in Florida because it is such a swing state. And as we know, every vote does count, especially in the state of Florida. And Maeve was talking about some of the historical comparisons. Look at South Carolina, also in the path of this storm. That Republican governor did extend the deadline there. Yeah. So it just gives you a little bit of a different take. South Carolina is not a swing state, so the stakes are not as high there.
No, certainly. Okay, so we have the big town hall coming up on Sunday. Anderson Cooper is going to moderate this. And Maeve, this can be a bit of a tricky format. Donald Trump hasn't had a ton of experience doing this, and so he had this town hall last night, even though he's insisting it wasn't debate prep, and even though you had questions funneled through a radio host, so it wasn't that one-on-one with voters that we're going to expect on Sunday. When you watched that, what did you take away from what Donald Trump is going to bring on Sunday, or what he needs to improve on?
Well, what I took away from it is that he's really not that interested in practice at this point. I mean, all three of us have covered tons of town halls in New Hampshire in the past, and it's very rare that you would have a pre-selected audience like that and one host sort of pre-selecting the questions. And they were really, a lot of them, laughable softballs, like about his childhood memory and the World Series. So that clearly was not a format that would prepare him for the kinds of tough questions that he will face in the debate on Sunday. But this is a tricky format. There are a lot of things to think about when you're on that stage, not just the space between you and your opponent, but how you connect with the voters in the audience while still landing attacks on your opponent, and you know, whether you can show sort of command of the stage but not wander around too much like McCain famously did in one town hall meeting. So, I mean, there's a lot to think about and there's a lot to practice, and Donald Trump would be well served looking at some of that tape.
Yeah, and Dana, real quick, as we get back to hurricane coverage, what is your expectation, or what does he need to do? What does Hillary Clinton need to do?
Well, first of all, I would just say that there was one moment last night, Bree, where he said, I'm not doing this for practice. It's like my staff thinks that I'm a child, something along those lines, which is, it kind of made me chuckle, because that is the reason why they added this town hall. Not because they think he's a child, but because they couldn't get him to practice in the more traditional way, and this was their best shot. They are doing practice inside Trump Tower today, much smaller groups than they had before. Unruly, I was told. Reince Priebus, the RNC chair, Chris Christie, his friend from New Jersey, who made last night's town hall happen. So that is the kind of thing that they're at least trying to change a little bit when it comes to his debate prep, but he's just not interested in doing it. He feels that he's best off the cuff, and that is how he's going to approach Sunday.
Yeah, they're like forcing him to do his homework, but he did it last night, so we'll see how Sunday turns out. Dana Bash, Maeve Rustin, thank you so much to both of you, and we will be back with live breaking news coverage of Hurricane Matthew. But first, here's a look at some of the damage that this Cat 3 storm has already left in its wake.
The wind is just whipping the trees out here. And of course, the big concern are these power lines up here. We're going to get out of here for our own safety, but we wanted to show you this is some of the worst of the damage that we've seen. You can't even tell that there's a house behind this massive mound of trees here on Hampton Road in Daytona Beach.
We're in Melbourne, right by the causeway. It's still closed right now as lots of people are waiting to get across the bridge and see what kind of damage has been done to their homes. We're watching FDOT turn cars around, and if we can turn this way across the street, it's a near parking lot. People are getting turned around, and they are just not leaving. People are that anxious to wait it out, wait for the